Definitely, I'll add my voice to that too.
Okay. Former London halfback Josh Drinkwater, there's a blast from the first season of Super League Pod, has signed for Lee for the remainder of the 2016 season. The 23-year-old Australian halfback joins from West's Tigers, who he has played for since he left the Broncos at the end of 2014. I'm very much looking forward to joining Lee Centurions, Drinkwater said. It is an ambitious club, and hopefully I can play a part in the club's endeavour to Super League promotion.
Yeah, what struck me about this is two things. Obviously, it adds more to the Rangi's gone kind of storylines, but more I was thinking, there's another team in the Championship who really could do with a scrum half.
Yeah, true.
What's going on?
Well, they're obviously keeping the powder dry until Rowan's had a chance to have a look. There's been that sort of overlap period now, hasn't there? And Jacob Truman, product of our youth academy, made his debut this weekend and I wouldn't say cover himself in glory because he was only on the pitch for 20-25 minutes, but
didn't embarrass himself.
Didn't look out of place, didn't embarrass himself, nearly set up a try with a kick. It wasn't his kick that was poor, it was the tap down got fluffed by Matty Blythe, who's been probably the worst player in a Bulls shirt for the last 18 months. So I don't know whether or not they're going to go with youth and bring young Jacob Truman through a little bit more, or whether or not Rowan's going to use some of his contacts in the NRL to bring someone on. But to be honest,
I think
Josh Drinkwater is a decent Championship player. Probably I was never really impressed with him in Super League. Although
he
was perhaps being a beaten pack. Maybe he'll do a bit more with this Lee pack in front of him and be more impressive. But I was never overwhelmed by him.
Good kicking game when the team got him in a position to kick. I always thought with Josh Drinkwater. Yeah. I think the problem was he was in that Broncos team that was very inexperienced, cobbled together, and not ever really going to compete, unfortunately.
Whether or not he as a player is going to do enough to oust someone like Martin Rigid from the team, I don't know, because he's a similar player to Ridders, isn't he, rather than that kind of Rangy Chase support runner sort of player that you might want complementing your more steady Eddie kicking guy managing the team around the park. I don't know. Maybe I'm just conscious of trying to find fault with it because it's Lee.
It's a good signing, I think.
Yeah, no, not bad at all. Right. That's the news from around the world of rugby league. It's time now for us to ask the listeners.
Okay, so Tom, what we did for the 100th episode, we thought we'd flip Ask SLP on its side, upside down, and send some of the questions that the listeners have sent in to us over the last couple of years back out to some of them. To not get things too diluted, we went for the people who've won awards basically at the end of the year, and most of those guys were able to find a little bit of time to do it. Some of them not able to. That's fine. These guys, what that just means is that these guys who have sent them in are going to get more airtime basically, because the plan originally was pick about 15 or so questions, ask two of the listeners the question, and then pick the best one of the two for each question we had.
Oh, I see.
That's gone out the window because I couldn't choose, and we're getting all of everything that we got in. So these guys are getting. So they got 3 or 4 questions each, and the questions that we've used, we've been asked by various other names of Super League Pod royalty. We're talking like foundation listeners and people like that involved in this. So the questions that we've put to the listeners are asked by, so listen out for your questions, guys, if you can remember whenever you asked them in the last 18 months or so.
Yes.
Ian Gatwood, Alan Cale, Mark Dixon, Dr. Bob, Mark Stevo, London Faithful, Paul O'Brien, Tim Griffiths, Alan Cale, Chris McEwen, Dan Fowler, Andy Barker, David Pye, Scoots McKenzie, and Wally Frogmore were all in there.
That's a who's who, isn't it, of Super League Pod?
With people who got questions in.
There's some big names there.
And the people who you'll be listening to now as we go through these, Andy Barden, Bob Phillips, Brian Davies, Dar Garner, Paul Campbell, Rich Wilkinson, Scott Lister and Tim Griffiths. So we've got foundation listeners, famous names of the Super League Pod world amongst all of that. So it's fantastic. We're going to roll through them in alphabetical order, Thomas. You haven't listened to these yet, I don't believe.
No, so this will be great because you'll get my responses first hand. So we're going to start then with Andy Barden, the Electric Gigolo.
Hello, this is Andy Barden, otherwise known as the Electric Gigolo, long-time listener of the Super League pod, and this is episode 100 of the Super League pod. I've been kindly asked by Mark and Tom if I would answer 4 questions for the show, so here we go. I'm going to start off with question 1. If you had a time machine and could bring one player from your club's past into your current side, who would you pick? If there were so many, I would pick. Obviously, there were so many greats in the game, but obviously, I've got to talk about my own club, supporting Wigan. So, the player that I really enjoyed watching and admired in the past was Trent Barrett. It was a shame that he went a bit too soon. Really, I thought when he was just picking up form, he was leaving really. But yeah, he was very good under Brian Noble, and I think he brought some of the best out of youngsters. And I think, to be honest, he brought probably the best out of Sam Tompkins, who was a youngster back then. So no, that'd be the player. So Trent Barrett. And I'm going to answer another question handed to me by Mark and Tom. I'm not going to do it in any order, but I'm going to read out and answer the 4th question they gave me. What would you get the RFL to do to get the BBC and the main newspapers take notice of the sport? A tricky question. I think, to be honest, we need to get the BBC involved in the sport more, really. Looking back at the last World Cup we had over here, I think the BBC missed a trick there, really. It was a very successful World Cup, but I couldn't understand why BBC didn't want to take all the rights of showing all the games, where Premier Sports we ended up showing a few of them. All BBC did was show all the England home games, and then the semi-final and final, really. I think there was a missed opportunity there with Premier Sports having to pay subscription. Not all pubs across the nation have Premier Sports, so I think the BBC missed a trick there, really, because people will watch rugby league when it's on TV, and if you're going down your local boozer and the only sports on is on the BBC or on terrestrial telly or Freeview telly is rugby league, it would have been put on, and I think people would have watched it, really, and just got a little bit involved. So I do think the BBC missed a trick there, really. Like I said, I'm not sure what the answers are for the newspapers, especially the newspapers where I live in Mid Wales. I think you only see a little small paragraph of rugby league news, and the rest is obviously dominated by football or rugby union. I'm going to read out one of the questions out now they gave me. This is quite a good one, actually. I don't think you need to be an expert at following a game. By all means, I am not, because I do give silly opinions, and I think Mark's criticised me in the past of some of the opinions I've got, but at the end of the day, I'm a fan, I enjoy the sport, but this is a question I really like, and I think this is a question that most fans would ask themselves anyway, really. It is, if you were Dr. Kukash and you hadn't invested in Salford, which club out of the 3 British leagues would you invest your money in? Looking back at it, when Marlon Kukash had the chance to invest in Salford, I think a couple of months after that, that's when we had the trouble at Bradford Balls, and he did his best to try and invest in that club, but unfortunately RFL guidelines and rules and legislation prevented him doing that. So but I've got to answer the question for myself. I wouldn't want to go invest in one of the big clubs. I would have made it more interesting, really. I would have invested in the London Broncos. I would have liked to bought out the London Broncos. I'm living in Mid Wales and having spent a lot of my time living in London, I'm a big believer in supporting the non-heartland rugby league clubs. I've seen great development over the years now. When I started supporting the game when Super League first came out, really, when it was more based on a northern-based game, and now we're looking at the leagues now, we've got teams from all over the country, really. So that's what I really admire about it. We are going the right way. My dog's barking at me, not sure why. She wants to get involved. She's probably disagreeing why I'd support the London Broncos, but no, I would invest in the London Broncos. I think they are important to the development of rugby league, and to especially have a capital side involved and invested in, I think it is essential. Like I said, some of the best international games have been played out in London. I think London play a key part in rugby league. It would have been nice to get fans on the terraces, get London to have their own club, their own pitch, their own stadium, really, instead of renting. One of the things I haven't liked is London Broncos have always been on the move. Like I said, they've been there in Twickenham, Charlton, Fulham, but they've never really had a place they can call home. I thought there was potential up in North London when they went up there, but now they're in Ealing. I don't know if it's the best move. I'm not sure really. London's changed over the years. When I was first living down there was quite a large pool of Australian and New Zealanders living down there, because the pound was strong back then, so you had a lot of backpackers. And I remember going to Brentford, and they used to do offers on Victoria Bitter when they used to have a bucket of lager, where I used to try and appeal to the Aussies and backpackers out there to come and watch the game. Really, the side was based of mainly Australian players, and that's what they were trying to push for, really. Now London's changed, the current climate's changed. We don't see as many Australians, New Zealanders down in London now, because their dollar is quite strong, really. So I think now we tend to be more based towards the British fans. It has been disappointing seeing such poor attendances in stands when you've got a very large population in the capital, and they can't seem to bring them to the terraces, really. Had I had Mr. Kukash, Dr. Kukash's, I should say, money, it would have been quite nice to invest that, really, especially on promoting the club, just giving it publicity. I think that's where we are quite critical of Dr. Kukash, where he's been involved in some of the, I would say, probably the team, the coaching and all that, really. It's good now to see him not so involved now, and leaving the coaches to do their job. And where Dr. Kukash could get more involved is the publicising the club, really. And that's where, if I had Dr. Kukash's money, or if I was Dr. Kukash, I would have invested in the London Broncos. Right, Super League Pod listeners, I just want to thank Mark and Tom for giving me the opportunity on the 100th episode. Congratulations to them, going 100 strong, and will be before long that they'll be doing the 200th episode of the Super League Pod. So I just want to thank them for letting me answer a few of their questions, and hopefully they'll be on the show. Thanks again, Mark and Tom, you're doing a great job. It was a pleasure meeting you last year. I hope to meet you again this year, and I'll be looking forward to listening to the 100th show. Keep going, guys, and you're doing a great job.
Okay, so that was Andy Barden. That was amazing. Thank you so much, Andy. Andy's been in touch with the show from episode, prior to episode 1, hasn't he? He's been he was there before we had a date for the first show lined up.
I think Andy came up with the term foundation listener.
In fact, yeah, well,
by trying to explain how long he's been involved. Yeah.
And never more applicable has the term. I'm a little concerned that you've criticised his opinions, Mark. I don't know when that was, and
I don't remember that.
I hope it hasn't got under his skin too much, upsetting, because I'm certain
it's been sat there bubbling away all this time, obviously.
But yes.
And by the way, we didn't cut anything. Andy didn't answer 4 questions.
Yeah.
He was going to, and then I think he chose not to.
I think he did what we sometimes do, and sort of meandered off on his little rugby league path. And that's where he went.
Certainly, the listeners there got a big insight into Andy's sort of journey through being a rugby league fan. And Andy holds one of the unique accolades of doing an introduction to the show twice, hasn't he?
Yes, he has.
And we've met him twice. But that day at Blackpool last year was a great day spent with Andy, wasn't it? Getting to wear his wrestling mask and all that.
Oh, you did, yes. So speaking of people that have done introductions, not the